Japan is to relax its visa policies to attract more Chinese tourists, aimed at enhancing more robust exchanges between the two countries. What could be the impact of this new policy? And in our continuing series of the Belt and Road's Heartbeats, I'll be talking to a Hungarian about how cross-cultural exchanges can break down barriers of understanding. Welcome to The Point. I'm Li Xin. To start things off, the election of Macron as the next French president may just make the EU a little more confident, as many will conclude that the global populist surge has now peaked with Trump and Brexit. The electoral failure of anti-establishment politicians in Austria, the Netherlands and now France will give them hope that the troubled EU is not quite so threatened as they had imagined. With local German elections soon to take place, and not to mention Italy and other countries, it could be that with the election of Macron as France's next president, many in Europe will now be able to sleep more easily in their beds. However, if you look at the number of abstentions, as much as a quarter, and invalid ballots, which were as high as 11% in the second round of the French presidential, it does show a continuing lack of confidence and dissatisfaction by the people on both sides of the political divide. That also should give people pause for thought. Now, populism might have peaked, but if the problems that led to their emergence continue not to be addressed, then we could still see Le Pen as the next president after Macron. Now, the Embassy of Japan in China announced that starting from Monday, Japan will relax visa policies to attract more Chinese tourists. Now, specifically, the economic threshold for Chinese people applying for multi-entry visas will be lowered. Multi-entry visas to the northeast of Japan will be extended from the current 3 prefectures to 6. Chinese citizens living outside of China can also apply for multi-entry visas, and application materials required for a single entry visa to Japan will be streamlined. The 6 prefectures in northeast Japan include Iwate, Miyagi, Fukushima, Akita, Yamagata and Aomori prefectures. For any Chinese tourist who would like to travel by themselves to Japan using a multiple visa, they would have to make a stay in one of these 6 prefectures. Now, the Japanese embassy says these measures aim to enhance more robust personnel exchanges between China and Japan. What's the consideration behind such a new policy, and how is this likely to impact on the personnel exchanges between the two countries? I'm happy to be joined from Tokyo by Professor Tatsuo Nabo, former president of the Japan Association of Foreign Trade and Business. Professor Nabo, thank you very much for joining us today. Now, Japan is among the top 3 destinations for the Chinese tourists over the years. What is the ratio of Chinese tourists against all foreign visitors to Japan, and how do Chinese tourists help drive the local economy?
Well, I think the recent statistics shows that as many as 5 million Chinese came to this country, and assuming that the 20 million is the total number of the foreign visitors to this country, it accounts for 25% of total tourists ever visited to this country. I think it's a great number indeed.
How is yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, I think it's a very welcome change, because increasingly the Chinese people are coming over to this country. I think this is a very nice sign that sort of as a sign, improvement between the two peoples. Anyway.
Now,
yes.
The Japanese government has vowed to attract some 20 million tourists by 2020 when the Tokyo Olympics takes place. Why is the Japanese government vowing to attract so many tourists to that country?
Well, that's a good question, but seemingly, first of all, Chinese people are very nice customer to this country. They come on over to here and visit the major metropolitan cities to buy up things. They used to buy a little bit, sizable items like a electronic cooker or something like this. But in recent years, their preference have a little bit more changed. They prefer to buy up small items, such as the cosmetics, haberdashery items or something like this, so that they can carry very easy within a home. I think, according to what I understand, is that it's something that we take it for granted. The items are not readily available in China. So they are so much curious to buy up things, yes.
Now, could you explain the policy in greater details, especially concerning the 6 northeast prefectures? We know that Fukushima is where the nuclear accident took place or happened in 2011. What's the consideration of including these prefecture to be highlighted in the policy? And what about the potential danger tourists could face when they're visiting these prefectures?
Well, I don't think there is any potential danger enough to mention, because when the great earthquake happened, and well, this is a sort of a national disaster, greatest national disaster that the recent Japan has ever experienced. And at the time of accident, the government actually specified the areas which are considered to be very dangerous, and evacuated the people from there to other places. And the people living in there actually spread out, throughout Japan, and still they specify certain areas where the radiation, volume is a little bit higher, and the people can't come inside. And of course, the tourists are guided according to the level of the radiation, which is very, very small. And as you say, when you go to the particular areas, there is a sign indicating the level of radiation, which is considered to be very safe, therefore very easy. You can see it, and no Japanese people take it so serious today, and we never take any Chinese people to any risky places at all. So I think it's very safe indeed.
Yeah, well, may I add one question here, because after all, people still have some doubts, especially outside of China. Do you think the policy of putting Fukushima among the 6 prefectures where people who want to travel to Japan by themselves, where they have to make a stay over, do you think that's kind of a wise policy to do to promote tourism for Japan? What could be the consideration behind this policy?
Well, I think just because the places like this is actually made the people victim of circumstances, and it's really against their will, and actually devastated areas need some restoration. And in order to improve the economic situation that is actually devastated by the earthquake, we need some help. These people need to be helped anyway, and the best way is to usher in the foreign people to visit these areas and actually let their naked eye to see it and enjoy sort of the local life that the Fukushima and all these areas, all these areas actually accommodate. I don't think if the Chinese people come over there, they surely welcome them, and actually these people are very, very hospitable. So the Chinese people will surely enjoy their stay in there. And actually, why the government has expanded from the original three prefectures up to 5, 6 different places means that they offer some selection or sort of much wider choice on the part of the Chinese people to pick up. And actually, excuse me, new areas, as I say it, is a little bit far away from the epicenter of the earthquake, so it's much, much safer. Even if the Fukushima is very safe, but some of the areas are also safe too, and they have scenic beauties, and they have good mountains, and they there would be some historical places that they can possibly visit too.
Instead of just shopping. Well, the underdeveloped service infrastructure in Japan is another point in case, and some people have seen it as a kind of potential obstacle to the boom of Japan's tourism industry. How can Japan be made more tourist friendly, or if not specifically for the Chinese?
Well, actually, Japanese government and the whole Japanese didn't take up, so much interest on the tourist itself, because as you know, Japan used to be the center for production for tangible goods, such as the machines and cars, and they have devoted their devotions for the production of these tangible items up until quite recently. However, the companies, actually start moving out because of the exchange rate of Japanese currency was very expensive, as well as the labor cost became very much expensive. Therefore, they can't afford having production center in there. So they start shifting their production to overseas. Particularly, they have transferred facilities to China. If you visit any economic zones of the major cities of China, you will see many Japanese factories and plants in there. However, the gap created by the exodus of many Japanese corporations, there has to be some measures, and this gap has to be compensated by something else. And they start looking at the tourism. Tourism has been for a long time neglected, but I think it has its potential to grow. Japan is a country where the people are motivated to go out, but when it comes to accommodation of foreign people from other countries, Japan is quite new. Therefore, considering this, back in 2008, Japanese government set up the tourist agency, and they started to work on the tourism quite earnestly, and this is the start of the business. But actually, it's getting so steady and making steady growth. And last year saw so many number of foreign people coming in, and particularly Chinese people, because of the maybe obvious, closeness, geographical closeness to this country, and sharing the similar historical background and cultural heritage. Chinese people are now very nice customer to us. Yes.
Yes, I hope that with the relaxed new policies, more Chinese tourists will be able to have a good time in Japan. Thank you very much, Professor Tatsuo Nobu, former president of the Japan Association of Foreign Trade and Business.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you very much. And here is my last point. Now, since China and South Korea are experiencing a cooling of relations because of the THAAD anti-missile system, Chinese tourists have shunned that country for weeks now. It's clear the Japanese government wants to take advantage of the situation and lure even more Chinese tourists to its shores. Indeed, over the past few years, more and more Chinese, especially the younger generation, have fallen in love with that country, especially the high-quality consumer products they can buy there. However, the political relationship between the two countries remains cool because of right-wing behavior and activism, which is even found sometimes in the hotel sector. Chinese shoppers are likely to continue bringing much-needed dollars to the Japanese economy, but an accommodating political environment would be helpful to sustain a long-term people-to-people relationship.
I'm one of the many Europeans living in Beijing as an expat, but I'm one of those few who have opened up a startup company offering international business development solutions and consultation services with a special focus on intercultural exchange under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. If you want to know more, welcome to The Point with Liu Xin.
You called your company New Silk Road. Do you think that you were trying to jump on this initiative and grasp the opportunity from day one?
I definitely have a major trust in this initiative, and this is why I chose it as the name of our company as well. Even though the One Belt, One Road initiative is mainly based on infrastructural cooperation, which is a very important core part of it, but I also believe that without the mutual understanding between the peoples of these countries, without intercultural exchange, it's not going to be able to boost the exchange and deepen the interaction between the countries to the full potential. My goal was to seize this opportunity because people are interested in foreign cultures, and I wish to deliver this in an acceptable form by combining these two different cultural elements, because I think this is the best way to introduce something new to audience.
How do you plan to do that, to deepen the people-to-people exchange?
I think to deepen the mutual understanding, people-to-people relations between the peoples of these countries, the best way is to discover the melting points between cultures, and also to discover the differences, because they are just as interesting as the melting points. And I think even though these countries are, the Central and Eastern European region and China, they are very distant from each other as geographically, but there are so many similarities. And I think the very beauty of intercultural exchange is to discover these similarities.
What are the melting points between China and Hungary, and what are the differences?
For instance, as for Hungary and as for Hungarian classical music, we discovered that if we combine folk elements with classical music, and if we facilitate crossover genres, we can also add elements from both cultures, China's culture, traditional cultural elements, and also Hungarian traditional cultural elements.
Is there anything in common between these two?
Surprisingly, there is. For example, the pentatonic scale, which is the very base of folk music in Hungary, and also a lot of folk melodies from China. The ancestors of Hungarian people used to live in Asia. This might have been also one of the reasons why we have certain similarities between our culture.
You are a very popular singer as well, and you sing.
How do you know that?
And you sing very well in Chinese, even participating in one of the biggest, not one of the biggest gala events for the Chinese people, the Chinese Spring Festival Gala. Do you have anything that you know that you can share with us that combines cultures of these two?
I had great opportunities to engage myself in Chinese culture throughout this opportunity. It was definitely an unforgettable experience to me to participate in the Spring Festival Gala in 2011 and 2013 as well. I mainly chose it because to me, learning about Chinese culture, learning about Chinese language was never been a task. It was always a hobby to me. It was something which I found really interesting, and this is why I was trying to learn more and more about it.
What is the most difficult thing you encounter while trying to promote Hungary and Hungarian products here in China?
For example, as for the classical music, one difficulty is definitely going to be the different appreciation level of classical music, since it's Western classical music. China has always had its own roots and own genre of music and performing arts. This is why it's definitely a big challenge to make it more popular in China. And this is what I wish to overcome by establishing collaboration with local, acknowledged and professional stakeholders and also artists, musicians.
Let's talk a bit about the other part of your business, which is tourism with a theme, and you have chosen wine as the theme of the touristic products you offer. What's the feedback in this regard so far?
I believe that there's a growing demand for themed tourism packages, mainly in the region of the Central and Eastern European countries. Since the last year, 2016, altogether we have arranged around 2 to 3 groups every single month for the high season of Hungary. So if we calculate 2 or 3 groups per month and 8 to 12 people per group, then we can say that we have organized around 200 people to visit Hungary and its wine cellars and vineyards.
Mm-hmm. Are you the only service provider in this regard so far, or Do you have much competition?
I think regarding themed tourism in the Central and Eastern European countries region, there is not a big competition. There might be many competitors who offer general tourism services, but here we wouldn't like to emphasize the tourism service itself, however, a certain industry. For example, we support our partner to create a reliable and a professional profile for their wines, and in order to reflect their quality.
What do you want to achieve through tourism, through bringing classical music, Hungarian classical music to China? Because all of these are things that you can't touch. You know, it's not like a railroad, it's not like shipping that you can see, you can feel.
It's not easy to grab on these two fields.
Yeah, why do you think this is important?
Because it's going to stimulate the mutual understanding between the people of these countries. A lot of people, as I mentioned before, they have no opportunity to travel to such a faraway country. But if we manage to deliver cultural products to them in a form which is consumable for the local consumers, the audiences, they have the chance to get closer to my culture, to Hungary's culture. And possibly in the future, if we manage to expand our operations, we can also focus not only on Hungary and China cooperation, but also cooperation between China and the whole SEEK region, the Central and Eastern European countries.
Is there a story that impressed you the most while you're doing these cultural, cross-cultural exchanges that you might want to share with us?
The need for hot water.
The need for hot water.
This is surprising for those expats who are living here in China and they are arriving here the first time, and also for those restaurants and restaurant owners who encounter Chinese tourists the first time. But since we have been experiencing a major growth in tourism from China in Hungary, most of the cooperation partners, restaurants and restaurant owners, they know already about this custom as well.
Because the Chinese people need to drink hot water and nothing else, just hot water.
If you have a sore throat, drink hot water. If you are feeling dizzy, if you are having headaches, drink hot water. If you have a pain in your arm, drink hot water. a lot of situations can.
Yeah. What do the Hungarian people think of when you mention China? What is the most obvious stereotypes? What do you think?
I think overall the image of China in Hungary is, in general, it's positive. Mm-hmm. And of course,
any negative China, things?
I think it's rather uncertainty.
When you mention uncertainty, you mean that they do not understand us, they do not know how we conduct ourselves, how we do things. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay. How do you think we can change that?
For example, by organizing more and more bilateral and multilateral cultural events. Culture is a very significant tool, actually, for it's soft power. It's soft power for a country. It can portray itself, it can present itself to another country's people.
How do you see your business develop in the next couple of years? What is your goal?
We would like to diversify the destinations too. As of now, we've been mainly focusing on Hungary and for a small part of Austria as well, Vienna, but we would like to expand the operations to the neighboring countries too. Because I think Hungary can play a major role in people-to-people relations between China and Europe. In the past years, it's been receiving more and more tourists, and due to its advantages, including unique culture, language, natural and cultural heritage, and due to its geographical location, I think it can be a bridge. It can have a bridge function between China and Europe.
Well, I know what I'm going to ask. It has very little to do with culture and soft power, but indeed it's one of the how should I say, sensitive issue concerning China's cooperation with Hungary on the One Belt, One Road, which is this railway linking Budapest and Belgrade. Now, the European Union has said that Hungary in particular broke some rules in terms of undertaking such a huge project, that it needs to be that needs to make a public offer. What do you think of this kind of obstacle? And when China is trying to promote One Belt, One Road in the future, how can these kind of regulatory hurdles be overcome in your eyes?
I believe that China has a major experience and major knowledge in railways. I think this is a fact. So I have no idea how the project is going to end eventually, but I think it would definitely make contributions to closing the gap between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. A lot of people assume, a lot of researchers and also a lot of different countries' governments are worried about the threat that China's presence might, for example, cause difficulties for European integration. But I think, if anything, it's going to boost it. It's going to boost it by building out a well-working, effective infrastructure, which is going to, in return, boost the economy as well of the region. And by this, we can speed up the gap. We can speed up to close the gap between these two regions.
I've been in China a long time. It's 50.
Corpus van der Rath is a South African businessman based in Beijing. 15 years ago, China's dynamism and opportunity for business attracted him to relocate. It's been a fantastic journey to be part of China's integration in the global economic system. What new possibilities has the Belt and Road Initiative brought to him? Join me tomorrow to find out on The Point in our special series, The Belt and Road's Heart Beats. And that's all for this edition of The Point. As always, follow me on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time.